I'm going to start this test by saying something incredibly obvious. I'm lucky enough to have a great job because I ride all the new bikes that come out every year. But every year there's always one or two models that really spark my interest and I'm looking forward to. Unfortunately, those don't tend to be American because, well, they just don't make the type of bikes that I'm interested in. They do make fantastic cruisers, some amazing tourers, but really nothing that particularly sparks my interest. Until now, until we have the prospect of an American race replica. Okay, so it's a race replica in the loosest sense of the word, but still it's got a couple of things that spark my interest in the shape of it's naked, it's sporty, and it's got a big V-twin. And here it is, the FTR from Indian, a bike that is styled to celebrate Indian's recent return to and domination of the Flat Track Championship in the USA. The race replica bit may be more styling than engineering, but you'd have to say that they've got this part of the formula absolutely bang on. It's a fantastic looking piece of kit, I think you'll agree. And then, like any truly good-looking bike, it has some juicy details that make you want to keep on looking. The build quality is excellent, no scruffy details or cheap-looking bits. And the components have got some big names. Brembo for the brakes, a Krapovich on the exhaust of this RR model, not the sort of things you would expect on an American bike. The engine is a 1203cc 60-degree V-twin with a high compression ratio that helps it generate 121 horsepower and 115 Newton-meters of torque. There's a steel trellis frame with an aluminium subframe, and the suspension is from Sachs at both ends. Braking is from Brembo and comes with 320mm discs up front and of course ABS. It's a tall bike, and at 231 kilos it's not exactly light. On the electronics front, this top-of-the-range model gets ride modes and traction control, which gets less intrusive as you turn the ride modes up. The TFT dash is lovely and can be operated via bar-mounted switches or via the touchscreen, which can even be used with a gloved hand. Much as the FTR is a gorgeous thing to look at, it's time for some riding. Joburg's traffic is a nightmare, so let's fade to black.
And come back in the countryside. No traffic, no police, no reason not to have some fun.
We ride a lot of new bikes up and down this stretch of road, and the first corners are fast sweepers and are always an early test of the confidence the bike has generated after its initial few kilometres.
Well, here we go, here's some corners. Tips into the first one okay, quite slow change in direction. Not bad at all, considering that's 100 miles an hour. Well, I'm definitely not dead. After my first set of corners, I'm quite impressed.
A few more corners under my belt, and the FTR reveals more of its character. If the FTR is very sporty and, let's face it, pretty un-American in the way it handles, then how will the engine shape up? America is, after all, the home of the large capacity V-twin, though they're usually air-cooled and slotted into a cruiser.
3,000 RPM on the clock, 50 k's an hour, second gear. Wow, that's not slow. The grunt off the bottom end is absolutely stupendous. Goes through the mid-range quite nicely, and then up past 6,000 RPM, it sort of half wakes up again, and it pulls solidly through to 9,000 RPM, which is where the red line is, without any hint of fading away or giving up the ghost at all. They're claiming 121 horsepower, I think it is, and it feels every bit as much as that. The throttle response, I've got it in sport now, is pretty bloody immediate. You can even feel it on the gear changes. You bang another one in, it's almost a surge. In fact, I think for day-to-day use, I prefer the standard mode. It softens off that instant reaction to a bit of throttle a little bit. It makes it a bit easier when you're navigating traffic, that sort of thing. But then it's not soft in any way. It still feels quick. It's still got an immediate response to even a tiny tickle of throttle. In this sport mode, even when you down change or even when you're rolling off the throttle, it's quite a sudden deceleration. Mind you, it's a big V-twin.
Big V-twins are known for their torquiness, and that's very much the same here.
I haven't had it long, but I do notice that I'm forever going for another gear. So even in 6, I'm cruising along, I do a bit of accelerating and then I think, oh, better change up again, and I'm already in top gear. It's got that much grunt that I keep finding myself always a gear higher than I think I am.
So it handles, and it's got a very impressive engine, but is it comfortable enough to live with on a day-to-day basis?
I like the riding position. Even though it's got high tapered bars on it, it still leans you forward a little bit, so you feel really in the mood for a bit of sport riding. The legs, then it's not a massive amount of room, they're not cramped, but it does feel like a sport bike. The seat's pretty comfortable, there's lots of room for your upper body. The wind protection is, well, there isn't any, it's rubbish. Some naked bikes get away with it, they seem to just, you know, magically make a bit of a hole in the air for you, but this isn't one of them. You've got to be, it's a muscle bike in that respect, because you've got to have muscles to hang on once the speeds creep up past 100 miles an hour or so. The seat's comfortable, not that I had too long in the saddle, but it is pretty comfortable. You could, apart from the wind, cruise around all day in this thing. The only thing I would say is the suspension is just, for me, maybe a bit too firm. I'm feeling just about every little imperfection in the road.
The FTR wears flat track inspired Dunlop tyres, and at first glance they look more suited to the dirt than the road.
With a big 19-inch at the front, I thought it would be more vague going into turns, but actually it's quite reassuring. I mean, even combined with the chunky rubber, I'm not getting any kind of worrying vagueness from the front, which I have to admit has quite surprised me. So I can dive into a turn quite nicely, but it's on the way out, when you give it a big handful, because the power is so instant, and the tyres are kind of chunky, flat track, it does feel a little bit mushy on the edge of the tyre. If you've got a decent amount of leaning angle on and you give it that throttle as you come out of a turn, let me just say I'm glad it's got traction control.
Fast bikes need good brakes, and once again, the FTR comes up trumps.
Bit of heavy-ish braking. That's one thing that's faultless, so these Brembo monoblock calipers. You do have to give quite a decent squeeze on the lever, but there's more than enough power, and the fact that you've got to squeeze, there's feel in there, which I was going to say is more important than power. It's not, but it's very important. So unlike the throttle, the brakes are easily modulated, which is a good thing.
Before I know it, it's time to head back to Melrose, where, unfortunately, the next journalist is waiting for his turn on the FTR.
I've only got an unfortunately short time with the bike, about half a day to be honest. What have I done? I've only just done 100 kilometres, which is not a lot to try and evaluate a bike, but already I would say it's one of those bikes for an experienced rider. The bike can feel a little bit intimidating, not particularly in a bad way. I like that. It feels like you've got to master the bike, you've got to make it do what you want. It's not totally cosseting, it doesn't totally look after you, make you feel completely relaxed. And I really don't think that's a bad thing. Oh, bloody hell, it is quick.
Truth be told, I needed to get back because the small 13-litre tank was almost dry, and that's one of the few small criticisms of the bike I've got. The lack of range calls a halt to your fun all too soon.
Okay, so let me get this straight. An Indian American cruiser.
It's not a cruiser.
Cruiser-ish is intimidating.
It's maybe intimidating is a little bit of a strong word, but it's. I think it's a bike for the experienced. Not only is it quite tall, which I don't suppose you have to be experienced to have long legs, but the nature of the power delivery is so immediate. The handling, it's one of those lovely bikes which rewards a rider who knows what he's doing. It needs muscling a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah, but yeah, it is one of these sort of motorcycles that it's difficult to get it into a corner, but once you're there, you're sort of thinking, you know.
Yeah, it does. It settles in.
Can we just also emphasize that you don't have to have it on sport mode?
True, and I would recommend that you don't, really.
Yes. Sport mode is a hell of a lot of fun, though, but don't. Sound like the Catholic Church.
Just don't. Am I allowed, though, to mention a couple of things that irritate me?
You are.
Okay, the fuel filler cap.
Yes.
I know this is small, but
yes.
it comes out. It's not on a flap or anything. So you take it, and then you sort of, where am I putting this? And wherever you put it, it's round. It rolls off, and so you have to walk across to the pump and put it on.
Yeah.
The foot pegs, beautiful to look at. But like everything, all the details on this bike are absolutely gorgeous, and the foot pegs are lovely. However, having said that, they're too slippy. So listen, what do you think about price? I mean, we're looking 209 for the very basic one, which I'd have to say, don't get. For 229, you get the adjustable suspension, you get that fantastic screen, which really is superb. Operate it with a glove, control it from every different angle. I loved it, a really useful thing. You can go to 269 for the race replica one, which gives you a different coloured frame and the Akrapovic pipes, which I wouldn't bother with, to be honest. Go for the 229 one, because the base one at 209, you're not getting the adjustable suspension and you're not getting the fancy TFT screen. Yeah. You know what's missing on this bike? Really, at the price, is an up and down, is an auto blipper gearbox.
I know. I'm
Bit of
not
a shame.
sure. Yeah, okay. Indian, please, I know you're starting out fresh on your, sport bike venture. Put an auto blipper on it.
At that price and in this market, it needs
the
an auto
Super Duke
blipper.
has one. The Austrians do it. Come on.
But I tell you what, I really enjoyed this. I only had not much more than half a day with it. I want to ride it again, and thankfully it lived up to all my expectations. If you're ever remotely interested in a naked sport bike, get down to Indian here in Melrose Arch and get yourself a test ride. I guarantee you're going to be impressed.